Hey everyone, we're the Violet Reality. I'm Casey Rain.
I'm Kim Camelia. And now, as you all know, to start this video off, is we absolutely adore Prince. And you know that if you've watched our channel for quite some time. But because we love Prince so much, we sometimes have to be critical as well. So the subject of this video might be a little bit controversial, but what we want to say before we dive into it is that opinions are subjective. Everyone else has different opinions on different things, and this is the way that we sort of feel, but you might not feel the same way. So feel free to comment on whatever we've said in this video.
Yep. It's a video that's a little bit hard to make because sometimes it's not always easy to understand what Prince's line of thinking was at the time these things were happening. Plus, we have the benefit of hindsight. And also, at times, we just think maybe he just needed some better advice from the people around him. So with that said, let's get into this. Prince's top 5, in our opinion, career mistakes.
Number 1, firing Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Can you imagine if Prince had given the freedom to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis to produce other acts, but still within his own camp? It would have been total domination of the music business. Imagine those Janet Jackson records, those Alexander O'Neal records, SOS Band records, New Edition, coming out on a version of Paisley Park Records, with Prince maybe throwing in the odd song here and there like he did on the actual Paisley Park records that happened. But for the most part, giving Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis that freedom to produce and do what they were really good at. If that had happened, Minneapolis could really have been the next Motown or the next Nashville or LA and been a real center point of the entire music business. Even more than it was. Because if you do have Flight Time as a production unit underneath Paisley Park, then you're not only getting Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, but you're getting Jelly Bean Johnson, who produced amazing stuff for Janet Jackson and Mint Condition and many others. Monty Moyer also did Pleasure Principle for Janet and amongst many other things. If You Were Here Tonight, Alexander O'Neal, he did that. You get all these guys, all these amazing, talented guys. Jesse Johnson produced all kinds of incredible acts after the time broke up as well. All of these guys underneath Flight Time, underneath Paisley Park, Minneapolis would have been the city in the US, like even more than it was. Like that would have been absolutely incredible. That would have been a real empire. And I think, you know, Prince he was obviously like so young and had all of his own projects going on. But if he could have shifted into a bit more of a sort of Berry Gordy mindset, then we would still be seeing the impact of that, like even today. As it stands, without Prince and without Jam and Lewis, because they work from LA now, Minneapolis as a music city these days is definitely not what it used to be and what it could have been. Number 2, not collaborating with Michael Jackson on Bad.
I just had to make that face. So hear us out here. Creatively, you know, we don't know what this would look like, and there's different opinions to be had on that. But if you think about it from a level of like Prince making revenue, he could have made so much money on a collaboration with Michael, because way back when Bad came out, the actual album, and even before that, obviously Thriller and Off the Wall and all that, Michael was selling records like crazy. And let's not forget that in 1987 and in 1988, even though Prince was still making quite a bit of money, he did build from the ground up Paisley Park, which cost a lot of money to run, you know, especially for those of us that have been there before, you know how massive that building is. And he was losing a lot of money on the set of the Love Sexy tour, you know, with the basketball court and the car and just that entire spectacle. So, yeah.
Yep, there are reports that as they took the Love Sexy tour from city to city, the set sort of gradually shrunk and they'd leave bits of it behind in city to city because it was just so expensive to transport all of that stuff around.
So if you've seen any like rogue Love Sexy set material around anywhere, let us know, because we'd love to hear stories about it. So because Prince was losing so much money, this then led him to do the Batman album because he knew that this was going to make him a lot of revenue. And then this also led to him reimagining what Graffiti Bridge was going to be like because he wanted it to then be a sequel to Purple Rain because the association would be there and hopefully it would be as successful as Purple Rain because, as you all know, that was a box office hit.
Yeah, and Graffiti Bridge was not originally supposed to be a Purple Rain sequel.
No.
That's not how it was envisioned. So let's remember that. And one thing that's really interesting is that, okay, when these discussions would have been started around Bad, you can imagine that's about 86 because Bad came out in 87. 86, Prince is still riding high off of Purple Rain. Purple Rain would have come out on home video a year or so after release, sold a lot of copies and still bringing a ton of money. But by the time Bad actually came out, 87, and then the tour and the singles and all the promo in 88, in Prince time, that's like a million years and a bunch of different things have happened since then, some of which, were not as successful, losing a lot of money and things like that. And so what you have to remember is that, Michael was able to continue making a lot of money this whole time, but Prince really didn't end up having another huge hit that earned him a lot of money until 1991 with Diamonds and Pearls. And that's 5 years, after those discussions would have started. And, if he'd have done that collaboration, who knows what it would have looked like creatively, but in terms of business, it would have sustained that entire run and lifted everything else he was doing just off the association.
I guess that the interesting thing here is that whereas Prince was always just trying to put music out there and work as much as he could, get all of that what was in his mind out on records and then sell them and make the albums. And basically once one album was done, he already moved on to the next one before the tour had even happened. With MJ, however, the case was that he always wanted to outdo himself. So your Bad had to be better than Thriller, and then your History had to be better than the album before that. So, and with that, there was always so much more time between Michael's albums than there was in between Prince's albums. So I guess that's probably one of the reasons why not every single album that Prince made always sold that well, because Prince's aim wasn't to go commercial and sell a lot of albums. He just wanted to put his work out there. Okay. 3, signing the $100 million deal. It's been said a few times that one part of Prince signing that $100 million deal in 1992 was purely because he wanted to be the biggest name in the music industry with the biggest deal of all time.
Unfortunately for him, what he probably didn't anticipate was that it would drastically change the nature of his relationship with Warner Brothers. Of course, he'd already had disagreements with them in the past, but think about it from their perspective. If you're committing this huge amount of money to an artist, and there is a lot of debate about how much money he saw and how much money he could see or potentially see depending on how things sold. But regardless, if you're committing to a new relationship with an artist with a huge amount of money involved, then you're going to want to have certain protections in place to make sure that your investment pays off. It's like any business. It changes the dynamic. The more money that you've put in, the more investment that you've put in, the more concerned you're going to be about making sure things are done the way that you want them to be done. And if the other party in the relationship wants them done a different way, then you're going to have to fight very hard to find a middle ground and find a compromise. You're not just going to roll over and say, okay, we've given you loads of money, do it your way. It's not how things work in business. And this contract basically insisted that if those sales figures weren't being met, then Warner's were going to do it their own way. And we all know how this ended, and it wasn't pretty.
However, though, to add to that, I do want to say that you have to look at it from a creative perspective as well. So we're looking at it from the business perspective, so from Warner's one. But from Prince's creative perspective, we understand that all he wanted to do and cared about was put the music out there, whether it was going to do well commercially or no.
What's really interesting to note, especially knowing what we know now about what happened, is that there have been some very credible suggestions that if Prince had not signed this contract where he had asked for a large cash advance and a high royalty rate, instead he could have negotiated at that time for getting his masters back instead. He chose not to do that at that time. Later on, we saw how that played out. Number 4, the most beautiful girl in the world / come / the Gold Experience debacle.
All right, so this one hurts quite badly because we think that the Gold Experience / Come era, or however way you want to put them around, is really one of Prince's best eras, the way that worked. But it was a complete flippin' clusterfuck, honestly, to be fair. Let's put it this way. The Most Beautiful Girl in the World is one of Prince's best-selling singles, and so it's one of his most successful ones ever, basically. But yet, The Gold Experience, the album this single was done for, is one of Prince's lowest-selling albums ever, only selling 500,000 copies, and then it only hit number 6 on the Billboard album chart. So, what on earth went wrong here? Let's have a look into a timeline of the events that took place for this to happen.
So, in 1993, Prince alienates a large portion of the public by changing his name. But he also doesn't release an album in 1993. Now, Prince never really understood the value of going away for a while to make a big comeback. It wasn't really something that he did. Although you'd think that he would understand that, because the 1 year before this, where he had taken a year off in 1983, he followed it up with Purple Rain. So you would think that he would kind of get that, but not really. He was just too creative, too much music flowing through him all the time to really take a break for any extended period of time. But in 1993, he changes his name and he doesn't release an album, although you do get the first NPG album that year and also the first compilation with the hits and the B-sides. But really, after he's changed his name, the stage really is set for new music from Prince in 1994. Does Prince deliver? He certainly does. The Most Beautiful Girl in the World dropped in February of 1994 like an atom bomb. Number 1 in the UK and a bunch of other countries. Huge radio play, everything. Just a bona fide smash hit by any standards. Now, what's common in the record business is if you have a single out and it's a smash hit, what usually happens is that the album will very quickly follow. Companies will usually push you to get the album out to capitalize on the success of the single, because if people are discovering your music or really loving something that you put out, they want to buy the album. They want to hear more. They don't just want to hear, the one song. Most Beautiful Girl in the World does not have an accompanying album at this point that people can buy. Just the single and the remix EP.
Yep. So, because it takes a little while for songs to build momentum, the song The Most Beautiful Girl in the World is peaking, on radio, etc. in April and May of 1994. And then also leading into the summer. Word hits of a new Prince album coming out in August. Oh, cool, said everyone. So, the song would most likely be on there, right? Or so you would think.
Warner Brothers starts pumping the promo for the album Come. Wait a minute. Didn't he change his name? And this album says Prince. What's going on? Within days, NPG Records and Bellmark also start pumping the promo for a completely different album, 1-800 New Funk. That one has a lead track by Symbol, the artist, and Nona Gay, called Love Sign, and it's also coming out in August. Most Beautiful Girl in the World is still killing it on the radio, still getting played on TV all over the world, and yet Prince is now on TV, on national talk shows, performing Love Sign. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers is now pushing another song, Let It Go, to radio. So, says the public, which one of these records do we need to buy to get The Most Beautiful Girl? The song that's been killing it for the last few months, that we love. Is it A, this Come album, which confusingly says Prince and not Symbol, which is different to the single that we bought? Or is it B, this 1-800 New Funk record that Prince is now promoting on TV? Plot twist. It's neither.
Exactly.
Confused? So were the public. Prince now not helping matters too much by going on TV and not speaking. So, when do the public get to buy the album that contains the song that they've been listening to all year in 1994 at this point, the most beautiful girl in the world. September of 1995.
Yes.
A year and a half later. 1 year and 7 months after the single release. That is a just huge amount of time in the music business. And all the momentum built up by the single, the hit single, has now gone.
So, just in short, Casey, to sum this all up, you basically had 2 albums competing with each other.
3
albums competing with each other from the same person.
over the course of 18 months.
With a different name. So, like, on one of the albums, he was still Prince, because that was, like, the album that was, like, okay, like, obviously you all know that, like, Come was, like, Prince is dead, like, but... So you'd had your album competing with your other album, but then on
also
your
with your other album.
Yes. So you'd had 3 of your own albums competing with each other. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's, looking back on it, though, it's really interesting, because tell me one other artist that has ever had albums of himself competing with each other. Like, who can do that? Like, I also want to say that, like, Prince's work is just good enough where you can do that. But I feel like because it happened that way, he then lost that sort of momentum. So maybe if they released the Gold Experience right away, right then and there, that could have been, like, a #1 album as well as the single was a #1 hit.
Let's just say that maybe don't wait 18 months after having a hit single to put the album out that has that song on it. Generally not a great music business idea.
But
you know what's weird?
What if I want to try that, though? I want to try it, see if it works.
You know what's weird? I've heard in the music business these days, I've heard that the record companies will have artists do their album and not release it, and then they'll try a bunch of singles, and then they'll wait until they get a single that's a hit, and then they'll put out the album straight away. It's like that's kind of what they want to keep that gap as tight as possible. 18 months between a hit single and an album is not the one.
Last but not least, #5. The internet is over, and YouTube. When Prince declared in 2010 that the internet was over, it might have been one of the most damaging PR events for him since he changed his name. Despite the fact that he, many years later, clarified that what he meant with this was the internet is over for people that want to get paid, the damage was well and truly done. And his disdain for modern internet-based ways of distribution would mean that he wouldn't be putting out another album for another 4 years after 2010's 2010. So then he put out an album 4 years after that in 2014 called Artificial Age.
However, the real damage was done by his steadfast refusal to allow his work on YouTube. The explosion in this time period of YouTube as the dominant cultural force for video meant that while his 80s contemporaries like Michael Jackson and Madonna racked up billions upon billions of views of their videos on YouTube, Prince's music was nowhere to be found. As it stands, Michael Jackson's top 10 videos on YouTube, most of which were uploaded on there around the time that Prince made his "The Internet is Over" statement, have a combined 4 billion views on YouTube. Whereas Prince's top 10 music videos, which were only uploaded to YouTube after he passed, have just a combined 150 million.
Disclaimer here, not to be comparing MJ and Prince, because they were both completely different artists and amazing within their own right.
That's very true. We believe that if Prince had allowed his music on YouTube much, much earlier, he would have a similar amount of views amongst his most popular videos.
Prince's refusal of allowing his music on YouTube, and even going as far as to hiring people like Web Sheriff to take down videos that contained his music, and even sued some people for doing this, then kind of removed the access to his music for a whole new generation of music fans whose primarily way of searching for music and listening to it was through YouTube. And interesting point here, because that's the way I grew up. So luckily, I always had vinyls and DVDs and CDs, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to discover Prince until his music would have been put on YouTube, but also places like Spotify and Tidal and all that kind of stuff.
But most people your age didn't have vinyl and CDs.
Exactly. So that's the point here. It's been said that his heavy activity on Twitter during the last few years of his life came due to his realization that he sort of like removed that kind of connection that he would have had with the younger generation. So in this way, he would have been able to then communicate with us where we wouldn't have been able to find his stuff on YouTube to make that sort of connection. But sadly, for the whole YouTube thing, the damage there had already been done. I want to add something to that, though. That are my thoughts, because I was in that generation. I mean, like, you grew up in like a CDs market, I guess. So you always had access to CDs. So for me, it was like, I don't blame Prince for not putting his music on YouTube, because I understand it from his point of view, because I feel like artists should get paid like the right amount of money for people viewing their work, buying their work and all that sort of thing. But that's totally subject to debate, because maybe other people like you in the comments and the audience watching this video don't really feel that way, and you feel like Prince should have put his music on YouTube for any generation to access without having to pay anything extra for it.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, he should have done. I mean, I don't think he foresaw the cultural dominance of the new system in this way, and I definitely don't think he realized that his actions would, in practical terms, mean that an entire generation of young people who grew up not hearing his music. But that is what happened. Unfortunately, that is exactly what happened. And it's very sad. I think there's a lot of people who just didn't have the opportunity to grow up with his music because they came about in the wrong era. And that's really sad.
I wanted to end the video on, all right, so let's just say, so as we said in the beginning of the video, any opinion, which is what these are, they're not facts, their opinions are subject to discussion. So let's start a nice debate in the comments below. Be nice to each other though, because that's what we're like on this channel. We're all about spreading love. No hateful comments towards anyone. Respect everyone's opinions, but let us know what you think about these. Do you think these things that we've mentioned are career mistakes, or were they good things for his career in your opinion? Let us know, and just like let us know what you think. And if you would have been in his shoes, what would you have done in that case?
Yep. And I'm just going to say this now. If you're watching this video and you're thinking of commenting, Prince's biggest mistake was dating X person or marrying X person, that comment ain't getting published. Sorry. Not here for it.
Prince's biggest mistake was that he wore this color to that event at that point. No, it's like, honestly, it's like
music business stuff only. No personal relationship stuff. That's not how we do here on The Violet Reality. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications. My name's Katie Rain.
I'm Kim Camellia. This video was loads of fun to do for me, because I'm always a little bit like, oh, I don't want to say anything bad about Prince, because in my eyes, he was just like one of the most, if not the most incredible human being that ever walked the planet. But everyone has to make business decisions in their life, and sometimes you make really good decisions and sometimes you make bad ones, then make a really big turnaround and then go back to making good ones.
Yeah, exactly.
This happens in everyone's life, and everyone does these things because you have to like kind of dip your toes into the water to find out what's good and what's not good for you making money of like what you're doing, your work. Because you know, he had to live as well, just like all of us. He had to live and be able to actually make money to live off and feed himself and all that kind of stuff. Exactly. Well, that's it for this video. It's already been long enough. We won't keep you anymore. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time here on The Violet Reality. Peace. And be wild. Bye.
Hey, St. Paul here. Make sure you go subscribe to The Violet Reality, the funkiest channel on YouTube.